All right, so today is like natural hair day. So 80s hair. This is actually the very hair I had in my 8th grade yearbook picture because it's like the way my hair like left to its own devices looks. So it's like, you know, it's funny. Like when I was that age, like people liked big hair. Some people liked it. And I was always like, oh my God. Yeah, the I like that like sort of in, sort of my DNA, I have the like sort of archetypal sort of you know, big hair. It's in me. People it takes a lot of product to disguise this. But today, no. Today we're just showing this is how it is. This is the real me. No product. Yeah. One of my other beauty secrets is like I wash my hair before I go to bed. So anyway, enough with that. So okay, so here's the thing. This is the last reading from part 2, and I want to kind of like maybe show this in terms of like what this looks like. And I guess it would be, as someone who's been essentially reading these by myself to myself for the last year now, and my goal is to finish this by the end of the year. And it's also learning that it takes a year to read this book, which has been something that's, people say like, oh, it's up next in my queue. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to explain to somebody that this is like not that like what this is. Because part of it is I'm still figuring it out. And this is something I'm hoping to, I'm actually just going to like talk like I'm into the void. Assuming that I'm just talking to like yeah, I'm actually like I think the way I'm going to address this is instead of actually like imagining I'm talking to someone, I'm actually just going to talk to this kind of like larger kind of void aspect, because I want to talk about how once we get to chapter 12, which is about conscious creation, that part of what I'm going to be hoping to harness is the understanding of what this is as it relates to being a gift for the world. And I was, it's like the levels of how premature this as an offering have just been like, it's like almost, I don't know if it's like, it's like an onion example, but for some reason it feels like it's consolidating. It's like a reverse onion. It's becoming more dense, or like densifying in terms of like becoming closer to matter or something that like makes sense. But reading this over this last year, and going through the process myself in a sequential, like in the sequence, which really I'd never done. Like when I wrote the book, it was out of sequence. When I wrote the book, the second and like the order of like the completion and the work and the contemplation was absolutely not sequential. And so even when the book came out, which is like almost a year ago, I didn't know how to provide direction or guidance to people when they were saying, like, how should I read this book or what should I do with it? Because it has a shock and awe to it. You get the book and it's like, good Lord. And then you read the first chapter and it's like even crazier. I mean, I've had people say like, oh, I want a little time before we have our meeting, so I can read the entire book. And I actually used to kind of be like, maybe that's possible. Now I just know it isn't, because then I'd have the meetings with the person and they'd be like, well, I read chapter 1. It's really not uncommon for folks to read the first chapter and have kind of a blowout, have it be like very evocative for them. And that kind of is sort of like where as far as they can go. Yeah. I mean, the power of this has never been under dispute. Yeah. And I think that that's something, and even in terms of like my own self-awareness, has been something that has been arising as part of my own process in this process. So we're reading the last 2 pages of part 2, and it's an interesting thing to be doing alone. because it feels really like I was just, I was spending more time than usual sitting and kind of contemplating the pages and looking them over and having some thoughts on them. There's also kind of an interesting insight I had with that I'll talk once I start reading, but it's like, and in some ways it's kind of like, oh, and like there's sort of a sense of like, oh, I really want to talk to somebody. I want somebody else to be, this to be sort of like a celebration or a moment um, of having gotten here, and that it is by myself is like there's kind of a completeness to it. There's sort of and complete I would use as like a term for like integrity. Like there's an integral, like it doesn't feel lonely. Yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, because there is this thing where this is like so personal. Like this isn't about me, this is about you. But when I'm doing it, it's about me. When I'm talking about it, I have to talk about it as in me talking about it. But yeah. So let's see. Yeah. So I'm gonna read. I'm gonna do a little bit of reading. Oh, my lips are dry. Look at this hair. It's so funny. This really is. It's funny that it's the same hair I had. Well, I don't. I in 8th grade it was blonde because I used to put like sun in for the, if you know, you know. Silly. All right. So this is the last section of the techniques and exercises, and for the 7th hub. And the charging and the discharging of a hub is meant to bring some tools, like some awareness around how to kind of like create dynamism and sort of like create movement and balancing and expansion in a hub. So it's like moving the energy out of it and moving energy into it. So it's like energizing it, or like kind of like moving like sort of the blockedness out of it. And for most of the hubs, this involves like a physical process. Specifically, tremoring is a really important functioning of like moving muscular tension out. It's like moving muscular tension out, creating kind of like release and expansion. But I'm going to read. So it's page 266. We have in the 7th hub, we charge ourselves through learning new experiences and cultivating awareness of how we're part of something bigger than ourselves. To discharge, we laugh because taking ourselves too seriously is the antithesis of intellect. Wherever I travel, I get itchy about all the other places I want to go. Getting out into the world reminds me how ample it is and how much there is to see. We live in unprecedented times. Travel and knowledge are accessible at a level unimaginable to previous generations. If there's something we want to know, there's a good chance that people have already devoted their lives to studying and contemplating it. The yardage that has been gained through human curiosity is remarkable. If we explore, we can find the marker where we start running the ball into new territory. Exploring what has been studied is magical and connects us to those who came before. Diving into the waters of intellectual curiosity reveals depth and expansiveness in an ocean of knowledge. There's so much to know and experience, and like traveling, it's in the pursuit of action of learning that we become aware of how we're living within something big and infinite. Its size and scope are beyond comprehension. To stand at the shore and look out is to believe we know what we see. To dive in and experience the ocean changes everything. Yeah, so here's my hot take on this. This is the first time in reading this book that I have found something that I consider to be completely incomplete. And it's the first time that I've encountered something that I would rewrite. I'm not going to rewrite this book. I don't plan on rewriting it. In fact, the imperfections in it, I mean, there may come a time, I'm not sure, maybe that I do some edits on a few of the kind of like the typos and maybe a few little tweaks here and there, but I kinda like that in there. Kinda like the book is, like, in so many ways, like, so finely milled, like, for what it is. Like, the kind of existence of things being, like, not totally right, and even, like, some of the sections feeling a little less baked than others, like in the 6th hub, finding some of that stuff. I like that about it, and I may change my mind. I may change my mind, in time. I don't know, but I would say that, this is the first time I've come across something that I really see as, like, and so this has to do with the process that I'm in. So it's so okay. So the thing is that I have in the previous hubs, what's shocked me or like been like a point of pause is how the book is it like even though my thinking on it has evolved, that the book remains with it. Like that it actually houses within it like a different revelatory level that's supported by the newer level of insight that I've achieved. This is the first time that I'm like, yeah, this isn't it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So when we're talking about charging this hub, and I don't know to what extent I would rewrite this, but I would say that in this practice, my practice in the process that I'm in right now and what I'm experiencing is that the template that my beliefs and even like my intellectual structures of how the world operates. I don't know how well I'm going to articulate this, but I'm just going to start into it. And I really want this to be sincere, so I don't want it to be like so maybe we'll see. But it's interesting because it's almost like the 7th hub has the power to like obliterate this entire framework. This is a way that I would put it. So this entire framework of actualization reaches its apex, and in that apex, it there's kind of this notion of like all truth contains paradox, and this is also a lot bigger, and the construct of our intellect and what we believe to be true and what we've been taught to be true is contained in the programming of the lower hubs. So the actualization that happens in the stepwise process of ascending through the hubs, that there's this quality in the 7th hub, it's like that's just this kind of like obliteration of everything that came before. It's like an ascension. In a sense, of the ascension. It's like um, to be able to see the intellectual component of the belief systems, of the programming, of the structure of the adaptations that we have, about how our adaptations, hub by hub, have been shaped by cultural beliefs, societal beliefs. I mean, that's been happening, but a lot of it has to do with familial and community. And this is, I think, in the 7th hub, it's like it's a broader context. So it's like the world, like what we've been taught about what the world is. And honestly, I get it. It's like why it's like how the lower hubs, the necessity of having the very embodied aspects of ourself like like integrated and like to shed the adaptations and come into the knowing of the internal integrity, to the knowing of what we are outside of like the adaptations and the holding patterns and the just like all this like survival stuff. So here's the thing. So charging in this hub, and this was like in earnest when this was written, this was in earnest. This really represented the seventh hub, and it represented the seventh hub as it relates to the creation of this like I'll call it the book. I'm starting to maintain this thing where I'm like, it's not a book, it's something that's contained within a book. But this is like what this is kind of a thing or an entity or whatever. But the thing is like to charge, to activate and energize and expand the seventh hub is like learning new experiences and relationship with higher power. So the thing is that this is charging, and the point of charging and activating and energizing and like so like this expanding capacity component is like really meant to represent something that is like, let's see. Yeah, I'm really in this for like almost like talking. This is like this new quality in this, which is talking to myself about it. It's um about being able to like sort of like blast through adaptations. And these are actually potentially ways that adaptations get strengthened. So this is why this is the first thing I've come across where I'm like, this would be rewritten if this was going to be rewritten, which I do not plan to do again. So I'm gonna read it, but I don't even know. I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna talk about why these are incomplete. So learning. When we read new books that show us different perspectives, we fill ourselves with the knowledge that life can be experienced in an infinite number of ways, yet it contains shared themes. When books fill us with new ideas and possibilities, we expand our capacity to live. We broaden and charge this hub when we allow ourselves to experience new things without immediately minimizing, comparing, and categorizing them. Openness to learning and new information charges us up. Read a book, go somewhere you've never been, or take a class and learn about something entirely new to you. I'm canceling that. Okay. And I know it seems like I think maybe, and it does represent a tier of charging this hub and the ascension in this hub. But what I would replace that with is emptying. It's unlearning. So it's not learning, because most of what we learn gets stacked on a foundation of belief systems that we already have. So it just gets categorized. It's like if you have a shelf that has like a shelf for, actually, I don't have like the complete. So it's kind of like, if like we take learning, what we learn, and without knowing it, we help it validate what we already believe. And the little dents that it puts into, sometimes it puts little dents where you go, oh my gosh. But it's like, if anything, it's like emptiness. And it's kind of like, I know this might even seem like kind of like a little too esoteric or nuanced, but it's like, it's almost like the charging of us would be willing to like know nothing. It's like this, like charging is in this, and like to like let go of everything, and it's it's excruciating. It's excruciating, but liberating. To unlearn everything that you think is like, "This is how it works, this is how it works, this is what matters, this is how the world works, this is how the world works," and to say, like, "Maybe I don't know anything about how the world works," and to completely empty like, that's charging this hub. 'Cause learning, it's like it's basically, like, building on top of a foundation that's already been, like, set and has already, like, established the parameters of what can be built on top of it. And this is, like actually, here's a yeah. Yeah, because it's kinda like, okay, here's it let's use that as an analogy. So it's like learning, being like, look, if you travel and you get new information, it's kind of like, okay, well, this house that you've already built, which is your framework for like the world and your understanding of it. It's like you might go to Africa and you get a picture that you hang in the living room. You might go to, like Botswana and, it just like and decorate your house with these things, like decorating and it's like, "Oh, we have a, Turkish rug now and, cushions from, India or whatever." And there's just this kind of thing about it's like but it's still in this Western home. It's still like it's like the lights, that illuminate it are tied to the electric grid. Like, you still have the rituals of being an American living and so, by the way, this is, like, not, like, talking about that as being an inherently bad thing, but saying that it's, like, this thing where it's, like, you put books on shelves, but it's in a home that represents a construct of a way of thinking, and so it's really, like, an analogy of it is, like I mean, this will be like, it's like to go rebuild a new house somewhere, to be like, "I actually want a log cabin," It's like, like, I wanna build a clay hut in New Mexico. I want to like, there's just this notion, like, this is an analogy, but it's like how much of what the structure of how everything is can be it's like the importance of for me, one of the things is, like, letting go of the importance of relationships with people that are powerful. Just when it's like, yeah, there's this condition of, like, my behavior needs to be, like, really against my integrity. Being like, "Yeah, I don't care." Like, not like, why was I holding on to that? And I know that seems like kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from what I was just talking about. But, like, so, like, the thing about learning like, there's this kind of, like, learning where it's like, I'm gonna go travel somewhere and I'm gonna learn about people, but most of the traveling I've done, to be, perfectly candid, is, like, you go places and you just spend a lot of time with other people that speak English, other people that are, like, Westerners or whatever, so it's like you meet other people, like, from your country, from your similar, like, social and cultural framework. So it goes back to this house, the shape of this house, the foundation of this house. And so it's kind of like, to further the analogy, it's like, well, what happens if it's like, okay, this huge, gorgeous velvet, you know, two-story couch shows up at your house. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And it's like, it can't fit in the house. And that's the kind of thing where it's like, well, what you do with it, the most beautiful, extraordinary thing that's just like you've never seen anything like it, and it took, like a team of craftsmen 20 years to build the thing, and it doesn't fit in, so it just gets sent away or, like, sold off, or it's like, "What do we do with this?" It doesn't fit, so it just doesn't get incorporated. And so it's like, okay, well, this is the way our thinking works. It's like this incredible information. If it's going to it's like we're gonna have to knock down walls and like live in different places and reevaluate even like the thing of like the size of our rooms and maybe like something else or feel more affinity to something else than like what is familiar. And it's like, what does that do to us? It's like the dream, like, I'd always dreamed of a two-story red, like, velvet couch that's, blah blah, and it's like, yeah, and it doesn't fit in my house, so it's like I can't even, like, see it now. It just needs to, like it's an inconvenience, kind of thing. So learning, it's unlearning. New experiences. So traveling, I've already kind of pointed to this. Traveling, meeting new people, and trying new things feeds intellectual curiosity. However, when we try new things, we risk having bad experiences. The lowering of one's threshold and tolerance for disappointment and discomfort are sneaky ways we become rigid. That's a fact. Stuck in old ways and avoid trying new things. But negative experiences are just that, experiences, and we can learn from them in ways that can be positive, becoming more patient, compassionate, and even self reflective. Or we just need to try not to shut down our willingness to try new things because of a few negative experiences. Okay, you know what? I'm going to say that one, that one has, like, there's something that stays in there. And this is something that, so, having traveled quite a bit, the discomfort, there's been, like, discomfort that I've felt, like isolation, lack of, like, control, like, things that traveling, that it's like, okay, yes, it's, like, fun to have a meal with a bunch of great people, or be cycling in, the open air in Vietnam, or, climbing a mountain with incredible people. But some of the bad experiences that I had, which are, like, the reasons that it might be like, "Oh, I don't wanna do this anymore," in retrospect are, like, really potent as far as exposing me to feelings that I, like, normally had constructed my entire life to avoid. But once again, like, back to the charging of this hub, there needs to be an expansiveness that is related to, like, an openness to that, to not shutting that part out. So once again, it's just this expansiveness. It's like an openness, it's an unlearning. And I'm talking out loud right now. I don't, and, like, very much like this is in print, and this was something that it was, like, once a representation of, like, incredible conviction on my part, like, however changing this could be. I could come back and say, that, like, yeah, like that. I mean, that's kind of part of this, like, going back to the seventh hub, which is just like, and I think that actually now the more I think about it, the more that, like, represents a very seventh hub practice, which is just that, like, this a willingness to actually, it's like kind of meta, the willingness that information is incomplete at all times, just because, like, of the limited technology that we house within ourselves. So that the lower hubs, like the heart, the feeling, like the integrity, is, like, as the guiding principle. And the thing is, like, go with the gut, right? The go with the gut, go with the gut, like, that quality, like, the going with the gut is usually, like, moving in a direction that's, like, away from what's comfortable and easy. I mean, we don't call, like, it's not a thing. If it's just easy, we just do it, and it's like, "Oh, it fucking didn't work." But, like, the go with the gut is just like, "Oh, like, here I am, and this isn't the right thing." Right? And it's like the openness and willingness, like, and how hard that is. It's hard. It's hard. I'm talking in a really kinda, like, punchy way about this, which I, in some ways, kind of, like, regret a little bit, but this is also, like, showing what it's like to be in this process of, like, kind of transmuting something, and, like, um, coming to, like, my own clarity about, like, a newer, like, a different, I'd say, level of clarity on this. So, and relationship with a higher power, a personal relationship with a higher power, or a sense of being part of something larger than ourselves, can be a hard sell for folks who had early interruptions caused by religious practices that were either developmentally inappropriate or abusive. Reclaiming this aspect of life on your own terms can be tremendously energizing and fulfilling. I mean, this is something where it's like, even if it isn't, like, the notion of, like, God, it's just, like, to be outside and to be like, this is just a bigger phenomenon than just me. to feel just like life, weather, like the smells, animals, beautiful plants, like just that, look at the sky. It's just that it's like we're kind of like knit into this larger thing, and that we're not separate from it. We're not separate from it. We're not separate from it. It's like that even the matter that is contained in our bodies is like coming in from the outside. It's like none of this stuff is like originated. It originated from what we consider to be outside of us. So even if it's like, oh, it's just a thing about like where it's like chemistry and, matter, the fact that it's like, yeah, and this is like matter that's unified. It's like, this isn't a separate phenomenon. It's like connected with absolutely everything. So yeah, okay. I came into this a little bit harder than I feel about it. I think that there's just kind of maybe like a overarching framing of this that I think is a bit more expanded than what's represented here on the page. If that makes sense. It sounds a little. Let's see if we can. So discharging. So laughter. Yeah. The release. Ooh, yeah. The release and discharge of laughter clears us out. Laugh at all the ridiculous things people told you while growing up. Laugh at the silliness of people who misunderstood you. Laugh at bad ideas and clear the way for new ones. Laughter is the discharge of this hub because it releases intellectual rigidity. Remember, discharging and charging are connected. The afterglow of laughter can feel like a charge as it opens the body and allows for greater sensation. It's important to be open to laughter because, like crying, if we have muscular rigidity in our chest and diaphragm, we can get out a few chuckles, but a good belly laugh is elusive. Open the chest and diaphragm for a few deep breaths. Open the chest and diaphragm with a few deep breaths. Put a slight smile on your lips and say to yourself, there's nothing funny about this. Don't laugh. Yeah. And that's all she wrote. Look at my, like, look at my hair. It's so wild. Okay. It's giving, what is this, like in Back to the Future, Doc. So, okay, and then there's the outro, which is next in part 3, the Parinama method. All the hubs come together for collective evaluation and work in concert. And in chapter 12, they're explored in reverse order in the downward direction for the purpose of turning dreams into reality through conscious building and creation. So there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess like as like final words on this hub that once again, every time I work in it, I find it's really challenging for me. Um, like it doesn't have, like one of the things is like the quality of it, the sort of, I guess it's like the vata quality or the quality of it. It's really like, yeah, it kind of, for me, it rises this kind of like there's kind of a tenseness. And also one of the things I noticed in this cycle with doing this is that I felt like the thing about being disembodied kept coming, like the symptoms of disembodiment kept coming up, which was like feeling like the kind of cravings for comforts that were arising like subconsciously, like lower hub comforts is like the sense that I think there was like a sense of like feeling um like those the bodily aspect of myself wasn't being attended to, that I was like very in my head, and even just sort of like in space in a sense. And so there was like a lot of like, I don't know, just I felt like wanting to eat really heavy food. And I let myself, if it's like if there's the need for it, I'll do it. Or if I can feel it arising from that place, I do it. And it's kind of like, and then I was like feeling kind of like, woo. But so that's kind of been an interesting thing. But also the space of it. So the thing of unlearning the whole rant I just went on is that like the letting go of these structures, these larger societal structures, and just like being like, okay, I'm just, being like open to seeing things and experiencing things from like a different perspective. I guess it's like same perspective. It's just like a different context even. Is like really like it's a little like panic inducing in some ways, I guess. It's yeah. It's like nervy. Yeah. But look, I don't know if the light is gonna let us see it. There it is. Okay. All right. I'm getting kind of like sweaty in the sun here. So I think that's it for me. But yeah, I think it's like one of the things that's kind of like hitting me with this is that it's the thing of like kind of reaching this what feels like a milestone to me. And I've been really looking forward to like ending this cycle with the seventh hub and finding myself like doing it like I guess like alone is the word. It doesn't feel alone though, because I'm with myself. It's like with this fortified sense that being with myself is like a very complete state to be in. And in the 11th hub, it's like I felt like this thing where it's like, hey, maybe like a summary of like part 2, but chapter 11 is a summary of part 2 because it's like now going into this kind of like putting it all together. This process of putting it all together. So that's what happens next. So chapter 11, there's no more people. There's no more tables at the top, where it had the summaries of the chapters. And chapter 11 is like from the bottom up actualized. So it's like it's the same upward current, but it's putting it all together. Oh my gosh, wow. So it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are, E.E. Cummings. It does. It takes courage. Emphasis on the word courage. Courage. This is so yeah. I mean, one thing I'll say, like sort of as like a final note on this is that I've really backed away from talking about this book on social media and promoting it until I'm done with this, until I've completed this reading and done the chapter 12 on what comes next, because it's really a lot. This is really about like, okay, how do you self-actualize, and realizing that what is the blocker from self-actualization is a lot of like sort of protective structuring. And even if it's like calcified, a lot of life is built around it. And so it's like very disruptive. So it's kind of like, okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for my work and service of this? How do I serve this? Knowing that, knowing what I know now, you know, like I used to have conversations with people like, oh yeah, this is for anybody. Yeah, if you're feeling, and then, you know, then they'd be like, kind of just like shock and awed, you know, and I'd be like, oh, like I wouldn't know what to do. Like, you know, I'd feel like, you know, it's like, oh shoot, yeah. Okay. Well, we did it. I wonder if in the future there'll be somebody who's like been along with this with me, who's like watched every single one. Hi. Hi, you person, future person. If you watch like all 300 videos, I wonder how old I am when that happens. I'm still alive. Probably not. Um, yeah. Yeah, it's really, you know, I think when, you know, something that really matters to me is, you know, back to the thing of, you know, it's like, oh my God, this kind of blown some people out. It's intense, is for this to be a support. So this feeling, so even the thing, there's another meta thing, which is like, even this feeling of being like, wow, I've kind of reached this point alone of like reaching the end of this. And for me to be like, no, hi, I'm here. We're doing it over time, like over, you know. So even, so it's really similar to the beginning of the book. I write about knowing that there'd be somebody that, like, knowing the future, like connecting to the future person reading this and loving you. As being a kindred spirit. That's happening right now. All right. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye for now. Look at my hair. Jesus. It kind of looks like, honestly though, like my hair, it literally looks like I just like crawled through a sewer drain and I just like came out of there's like kind of into it. I'm here for it. Okay. Bye for now. I'll miss you until I see you next time. Bye.